Welcome in, everybody. Today, you and I will uncover the lie that you have told yourself about your thoughts. This is such an interesting and empowering concept, and it's a lie that, no question, we've learned to live with. And it's an identification that controls virtually everything in our life. And a lot of suffering, a lot of unnecessary suffering arises from that. So that's what we're going to be uncovering today. This is a very important topic. So, welcome in, everybody. For those of you who have planned to be here live, we didn't have an email go out this week about it. So, let's see how many are going to be joining us live. But nonetheless, this concept will absolutely empower and help you towards a better, richer, and more fulfilling life. There's no question about it. Welcome in, everybody. Have you, and I know you've experienced this, I know I have, when you've identified so much with your thinking that your thinking is actually starting to control you. See, that's the danger, and that's the illusion, and that's what we're going to work our way through today. So good to see more of you are joining here. We're going to be uncovering one of the lies that you and I have been taught to live with. Literally, we had people around us that just not were very aware of this, and so they passed on what they passed on to us, and we can't give anything more than what we have. So if our parents, guardians were unaware of this, yeah, there's a big likelihood that you and I inherited. So the other morning, my mind was definitely trying to control me. Some of you know I have a cold plunge. It's part of my morning routine, and I just did not want to do it. And I recognized that that was my mind trying to control me. And so we are in all these situations all day long. And in most people's cases, they have so identified with their thinking that it's actually controlling them. Can you recognize that? We'll get into our subject here in a minute, but I know you have those experiences where your mind is starting to control you and you start acting on things that you may not even want to act on. You're just doing it out of habit. Hey, Meta, good to see you. Sabine is here from the airport. That's great. I love that you're watching this even in the airport. That's wonderful. All right. So good. So today we're going to uncover a lie that we have learned to live with. And that lie, that identification with a false narrative, is really what controls everything in our life. And like I said before, a lot of unnecessary suffering arises from that. Suffering that can be easily avoided, actually, just by shining a little bit of light and a little bit of awareness onto the situation. And so when you ask yourself, how do I get rid of the darkness? You turn on more light. A lot of people say, well, how do I get rid of these patterns that don't serve me? How do I create a happier life? How do I create more business success? You don't do that by trying to get rid of. You do that by raising your conscious level of awareness on your thinking, among other things. So today, you and I will understand ourselves way more, way better. So when you ask any random person that you know or that you meet, who are you? How will they answer, do you think? Most people identify with their body, they identify with their mind, they identify with their habitual ways of thinking. If you had asked me years ago who I am, I would have said I'm Anders, but that's not true. That's a name. And it's two words, Anders Hansen. I can change them anytime I want. And a lot of people have a lot of fun with that, changing their names regularly. But so that can't be who they are. And so, how about this physical instrument that I'm living in? Is that me? Not really. It's the body that I live in. I don't say I'm body. You say it's my body. Well, who are you then? If it's your body, if it's your mind, if it's your thinking patterns, there must be more to you than the thing you associate with. Let me know if this makes sense in the chat. Just type yes if this makes sense. I have a great mentor over in India. He's a wonderful friend of mine. He's a guru, he's a yogi, and he's just wonderful. He said to me years ago, Anders, when you confuse who you are with what you have, you will always have problems. Most people identify with their thinking, their body, their past, and all these things that aren't them. Hey, everybody, welcome in. We're talking about one of the lies today that are really controlling us and how we can differentiate between the habitual thought pattern and constructive creative thinking that you choose. And this is a concept that will liberate you. It absolutely will. in our community right now, we are studying aspects of this concept. So it's really important. I remember when I still lived in Denmark years ago, it was about 18 years ago now since I left. It's hard to believe, but that's the truth. I had so identified with the mind patterns, I thought I was the thoughts that I was experiencing. And so, of course, if that's the situation, you become a slave to those thoughts. So now it's actually your mind that is controlling you. Ah, it's Dan. Hi, Dan. Good to see you. Love it. Love that you're here. So most people have identified some external thing, their environment, their belongings, their apartment, their house, their car, their family. They have so identified with something outside of them, or they are identified with their habitual ways of thinking. And none of that is us. It's things that we have, things that we associate with. And that's when the illusions start to arise. I remember I was saving for such a long time to be able to afford a big Samsung television, and just so that I could impress my friends and say, look what I have, And I was so identified with it. And I remember after I left Denmark and I sold everything, there was nothing left. I didn't have anything left in the physical environment to associate myself with. The television was gone, the apartment was gone, all the furniture, everything was gone, even my career in entertainment back then. So I started to ask myself those questions. Who am I really? Because everything that I thought I was gone, but I was still here. So I think some people don't go through that awakening experience until they lose everything. Now, could we? Absolutely. You don't have to get sick to get better. Some of us are slow learners, and I guess I was one. So I had to learn it the hard way. But when I arrived here in Miami, I was still breathing. I was still here, but I was more in tune with my thinking. I was becoming more and more aware of my thinking. I remember one day I walked down to my apartment here, and the thought occurred to me, I wonder what the neighbor thinks. And I thought, why do I think about what the neighbor thinks? So there was an awareness there now. There was light there. There was an awareness behind the thinking that caused me to question the thinking. Do you recognize that? Have you had those moments where, just type yes if that's you, you had those moments where you stop up and you go, that was a crazy thought. Where did that come from? Well, if you can think that, you and the thought cannot be the same thing, right? So there is light there every now and then. There's a sliver of awareness that's like, that's not me. Why am I thinking this? That's the real you. You are that awareness behind your thinking. But unfortunately, we have been conditioned to think that the mind is us. The mind is not you. You have a mind. That's a tool. You can bring it in, use the 6 mental tools. I think we've done a YouTube video around it. If not, we're going to be doing that. But you can bring the mind into play and utilize the mental tools to solve a challenge, solve a situation, and then you put the mind back to rest, and then you return back to pure awareness, because that's who you are. That will liberate you. So that was my first experience with disassociating myself from my thinking. And since then, there's been awareness there that's been growing and growing and growing. By any means, I'm far from perfect. I'm still growing. I'm still learning. But that was the first moment where I started recognizing it. Great. I love that you can see the same thing. It comes and goes in small glimpses, but our job, if we really want to take control of our life and override those 5, and there are 5 general mind identification illusions that I'm going to go into in a minute. And in fact, we have a free quiz that will help you identify which of those associations runs your life the most, but I'll talk more about that in a minute. So first, when we get to that awareness, that's the real you. You're the presence behind those thoughts. You can choose them, and that's thinking. Thought patterns, mental activity is a program that's run wild in most cases. That's where all suffering comes from. That's where all depression, anxiety, and all the mental states we don't want comes from. It originates through unawareness, ignorance, and it's not negative. It's just not knowing. It's just not being aware of. Then we can start treating a symptom, or we can actually go to the main cause and work with that. I would say, let's aim to work with the main cause. We've had people in our community, many, at this point who overcame a lot of debilitating mental states, even medication in some cases, by utilizing this, by really working with it. So you can choose your thinking. It sounds easy. It's not easy in the beginning, but it's well worth the journey. So let's differentiate between mental activity and thinking. Um, Mental activity is a reactionary state where you react to everything going on around you. That means there's no filter, or at least not a very big one, between input from your senses and your mind. So, in most people's cases, something happens outside and they start reacting to it mentally. Oh, he or she made me so upset. I cannot believe that the president tweeted that, or whatever it is, We react to everything. Or, did you see what's happening on the news right now? Oh, no, this and that. That's a reactive state. That's being a slave to a mental pattern that you're not in control of. That means your world outside is now controlling you. You're not in control of yourself. I call that overcoming the illusion of reality. And there's actually two states. We can go a little deeper in it now, and I feel my intuition tells me to do it. So let's do it. So there's something called inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. So inductive reasoning is where you go from something very detailed, and you build something else onto it that's also detailed. It could be, let's say you want to write a book, and you write one chapter and it became really great, and then you write another chapter and the third one, and it becomes your new wonderful book. That's inductive reasoning. Now you're actively working with your mind. You are controlling your mind, you are directing your mind, you are sending it instructions, and your mind obeys and helps you achieve something. Does that make sense? Just let me know, because it gets a little complex, and it can get a little complex. At least I want to make sure that you guys are tracking. Are you putting up what I'm putting down? Just let me see your favorite emoji in the chat. Just any emoji if you're tracking this. So inductive reasoning is to where you go from something specific to a general overarching concept. It's where you're creating something new. It is a state where you're more focused on your goal, you're more creative, and you're less susceptible to coercion and to impression from the outside world. When you're in an inductive reasoning state, you are not being bombarded with emotional inputs from the outside. You're better at rejecting things. Great. Awesome. Perfect. Love that you're tracking. It can get a little bit complex, but if it go back and review it a few times, this is well worth it. In an inductive reasoning state, you will not find that people can impress you with ideas as easily. It's easier for you to reject and say thank you, but no thank you. On the other hand, if you're in a deductive state, that means your thinker is actually set aside. Your inductive reasoning is set aside, and you open up your subjective mind to impression. There is a clear channel now from the outside, straight through the senses, right into your subjective mind. That is actually hypnosis. Hypnosis is a technique where you set aside that inductive reasoning factor, and the subjective mind is now wide open to impression. And so that's where the deductive state is where you go from an overarching concept and from the overarching concept down to every little detail. So let's say that you are cooking dinner with your partner, and he or she all of a sudden says, hey, we need something. We need these groceries to finish this meal. Please go down and buy them in the supermarket. And all of a sudden you execute on every single thing that needs to happen before you go down and buy that thing. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to think about opening the door, putting on your coat, driving down. All of that happens automatically. Commercials on the television, it's the same thing. It's like a constant bombardment with the same concept over and over and over again. Why do you think you get so emotionally involved when there's a movie? You let yourself get emotionally involved, and all of a sudden you're like frightened, you're crying, you're expressing all these emotions, and it's like you're not thinking. You're not thinking that these are just actors. They do a great job, but it's not real. Like, you let yourself become emotionally involved, and you're not questioning anything anymore. That's deductive reasoning. That's when you accept everything without thinking. And that's a dangerous state if you're not choosing it. So, a question for you: are your results controlling your thinking, or is it your thinking that's controlling your results? That's very important. When you let your results control your thinking, you are often in a deductive state. That means something outside of you is controlling you. Your bank account is controlling your thinking, your blood, whatever test is controlling your thinking as it relates to your health, your, whatever scores you get in school, how you're being graded. That goes into your subjective mind and controls your thinking. That's very unhealthy, but that's where most people live. They're not thinking at all, actually. They're just repeating old thought patterns. The other, and this is actually the difference between freedom and prison. So if you are letting results control you, you're in a deductive state and you're really malleable to impression, to coercion, to manipulation. Your mind is wide open. But when you are choosing a new thought pattern, regardless of what's going on outside, the better you get at choosing things deliberately and rejecting. Have you seen the economy is going to crash? Maybe for you, not for me. I choose not to participate. People, oh, well, you can't choose not to participate. I can choose not to participate, at least mentally. And when I don't participate mentally, there's a very little likelihood that I will experience it on a physical level, because everything that's created in here must be expressed out here. So it sounds like a simple question. Are your results controlling your thinking, or is it your thinking that's controlling your results? But it is truly the difference between freedom and prison. So what it means, how do we get out of this? You and I need to get better at building mental pictures with our imagination. It's the most beautiful nation in the world, the imagination. And then you need to get better at holding that picture on the screen of your mind with your willpower. Those two mental tools coupled with each other gives you the ability to focus and to think constructively, inductively. All right. And that is leading you to build a life of freedom. So you can choose to ignore this. You can choose to watch this video once or twice. Then you go on to the next lesson or next video or something else, and you let yourself get emotionally involved. We all have that choice. That's a beautiful part, right? There's an energy, there's a creative energy that has no form, that flows into our consciousness, and we can give it any form we want. Literally any form we want in any second of any day. For most people, they choose to give it form by the way of the old programming. The old paradigm provokes them to think alongside what that paradigm has been telling them for years and years. But free will, your mental tool to focus, takes precedence over any and all programming. So it might be uncomfortable in the beginning. You might experience resistance in the beginning, but nothing or nobody can force you to think thought patterns you have not chosen or accepted. So it's unfair to say that he or she made me think this, or, oh no, I'm so upset, because it's ignorance. It's not knowing. And a lot of ignorant people live that way. And then they actually get themselves sick because of that. Be so much better at rejecting things, at creating new thought patterns. And when you do that, you're in control of you. It's a beautiful state. It's a really beautiful state. So let's talk about the 5 mind illusions now that most people fall prey to. And we've created a free quiz. You can take it. There's a link below. And that quiz will reveal to you which of these 5 mind identification illusions you're living with. We have the quiz in Danish and in English. So you can take whichever one you want. So, and that will reveal to you, like I said, what pattern, like what mind identification pattern is currently controlling you. So the road to freedom is to disassociate yourself from that pattern and controlling a new one. That's the road to freedom. So the first mind illusion that a lot of people live with is the identification with hustle and grind. Like, I want to create better results and it has to be hard, right? They throw themselves into more work, more hours, running faster, working harder. That was me in the entertainment industry, no question. And I ran myself into the ground with illness and all sorts of things, imbalances to follow. That's the first one. Maybe you can recognize that. But this quiz will help you identify which one of them you are living with. The next one is fear and judgment. Are you afraid of anything and everyone? Are you afraid of being judged? Then there's a pattern there that's not very constructive that you can change, and the quiz will help you understand what needs to happen for you to change it. And then you have the identification, and this is such a common one, the identification with knowledge and certificates. I just have to know more stuff, know more, gathering more information, right? Well, like I always say, if knowledge was the key, chat gpt would have solved all of our problems. But most people, they mindlessly seek more information thinking that that's going to help them, and they've never learned how to integrate it, so their behavior and their results haven't changed. The fourth mind illusion is the one of lack and limitation. How often have you find yourself in that trap of saying I can't because, and everything that follows because is a circumstance that you have identified with mentally that caused you to repeat the pattern. And the fifth mind illusion is the illusion of luck and chance, where you gamble on everything or anyone outside of yourself. Very, very unhealthy. So I would encourage you to discover this more for yourself. Go deeper into it. Take this quiz. It's underneath. It's totally free. It's in the description. It will reveal to you which illusion you have identified with, so you can start breaking out of the pattern and start thinking more creatively and constructively. And when you do that, my friend, you will have overcome that lie that we have learned to live with, and create more freedom and joy in your life, and more thinking as a result, more active thinking, and not just mind patterns that are running on autopilot. So let me know if this serves you. I am grateful that you're here. Let's continue the journey. Let us know what topics you would like to explore. You can always send us an email to support@andershansen.com, and we will take that into consideration and choose topics for the coming weeks and months that are serving you in the best way possible. We're always live here every Tuesday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. That's 3 p.m. Central European Time, and that's 7:30 Central Indian Standard Time. All right? It's not who you are that holds you back from anything you want in your life. It's all those illusions of who you think you're not. Now, go check out the next video here on our channel, which will increase your odds of living a richer, happier, and more fulfilling existence. Bye for now.